Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the next fireside chat in our series of webinars. We are very excited to continue bringing experts in various fields with different information so that to all of you as we continue working through these tough and challenging times that we're all experiencing. I'm Frank Niesenbaum, VP of Sales for E2B Tech and C2B Tech, and I'll be your host today. I'm really excited to welcome a partner of ours, Matt Shanahan from Lockstep. And Matt will be, thanks Matt, and enjoying your fire. We moved, it's interesting, from the cold fireplace to the outdoor fire pit because we're actually experiencing spring. I know we are here in Ohio. I'm not sure out there on the West Coast how well it's working for you, but it's starting to happen here.
Looks like we have the same fire pit in our yard.
That's right. We have good taste. I'm impressed. But I'm happy to welcome Matt. And Matt's going to be discussing with us the impact of remote work on AR collections. And I can't think of a more important topic during these times than how we get our money. And our goal is to continue providing information to help your businesses navigate through these unique times, as well as come out on the other side stronger than ever. And as I mentioned, hope you all enjoy the crispness of our fire pits instead of fireplaces. And in our world, even in these tough times and challenging times, we know everybody's working differently, which is why we're doing what we're doing. And we remain really confident that as things start opening up, which we're seeing here and I know around the country, that we'll get through this and we'll get back on a vibrant path as a nation. So again, welcome, Matt. And as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about collections in this time, as well as Anytime Collect, which is a powerful product that we represent as a partner with Lockstep. So before we begin, we always take to take a little poll, at least one or two ask a couple of poll questions, just to get a pulse from the audience in terms of what we're doing. So the first question, which will come up for you now, is how long you have been sheltering in place. I know it varies for everybody. We're always curious to see what's been going on. So, less than 30 days, 30 to 40 days, greater than 40 days. I see some of that already. I know I'm well into 60 days, so I understand. Matt, I'm sure you are too.
Yes.
We'll just give you another couple of seconds.
60 days this week, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, crazy. Excuse me.
Looks like everybody's there with us.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of variance in that. I would have been surprised under 30. That would have been interesting. So now we'll move to the second question. And this is more pertinent to what we're going to talk about today, I think, a little bit. Are you experiencing issues with receivables and collections and issues around those topics during this pandemic? Just curious to see what some of you may have to say. Excuse me. Looks like it.
Yep.
All righty. Thank you. It's always helpful to get a little information from the audience. So Matt, again, welcome. Just gonna, have a conversation with you, chat about a few things. I think the important one, and your pulse is on this. What kind of an impact you've seen or you feel is out there around this whole shelter in place thing, around the accounts receivable people themselves, the personnel? What kind of things they're experiencing?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually meet with customers on a bi-weekly basis to get feedback, hear stories, figure out what's going on ground. And I think that the biggest thing we've heard back is just that accounts receivable is an essential function. When you look at the importance, they talk about essential roles, whether it's healthcare, grocery workers, certain things. Accounts receivable, you have to have continuity of the receivables. So it's been difficult because suddenly there's a lot of uncertainty in those receivables. The A staff that we're talking to has a lot more pressure on them, and they're feeling that pressure. Now, some organizations, actually prospects that we're talking to, are having to go into the office because they're not even able to work remote. So they have that stress, right? They're not able to shelter in place.
Yeah.
They have to get into the office. That's where the documentation is. That's where the checks are going. They have to go in. Others, have had to go home, and suddenly they go, we've never done this from home. And there's, it's taking them weeks to sort of figure out, how do I do this? What's going on, et cetera. And so they're having to get set up.
Yeah.
But you realize this is the front line of the business response to COVID-19. And I think the biggest thing is that, some of them have seen their hours cut, but the workload increase. And it's just that overall pressure, I think, on that role that has really made it difficult.
Yeah, it is. I know we all experience it one way or another. I mean, if you're human and you work, you're experiencing it. And so you're that conversation's perfect. And I guess then kind of transitioning to, so, I know we're doing it and you're doing it. What do you think working from home now, besides the obvious, is different now or easier than it was, let's say, 10 years ago, or maybe even less than that?
Yeah, it's funny, if this happened 10 years ago, bandwidth would be 10 times slower. Just internet bandwidth. There's a chart that shows how fast that grows. So just think of that one.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is then we wouldn't be doing this call for two reasons. One, we wouldn't have the bandwidth. And two, Zoom didn't exist 10 years ago.
Right.
Zoom didn't exist. Slack didn't exist.
Teams.
All the things that people are using didn't exist. And then you look at just laptops in general. People didn't have laptops. And while there were smartphones, people had it, the pervasiveness of smartphones compared to now is really different. So everybody's got a handset.
Yep.
Everybody's now able to work. There's enough bandwidth, and there's the tools to do this. It's a pretty big change over a 10-year period.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I don't think we all had cameras either necessarily.
Exactly. Especially HD cameras, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. And so then, and now because we can, right? So, going back to the AR people, the people in accounts receivable, the ones that are on the front line of collecting the money, maybe talk a little bit about some of the barriers that those people have to what they're trying to do every day, working from home in collections.
Well, what it's done is all of this kind of move has really uncovered some underlying conditions to the AR process that existed already. When you think of, a sales organization, they get a tool like Salesforce, right?
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful tool because it gives, an ability to manage activities and accounts and everything else. The tech stack, if you will, for accounts receivable is Outlook and Excel. That's their technology stack. Like, that's what I get, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If you're doing that, that's highly manual, right? Because I have to write every single email. There's no templates that it just generates with information from the CRM system, right? So I have to hand enter that. There's no tracking, right? So anything I do, I have to write down either in a notebook, in a spreadsheet, something else. And now I'm manually tracking all this stuff. And the reason this is, sort of like come to the forefront is, guess what? Every credit score is out the window right now. Nobody knows, right? So what they have to do is everybody's calling every single account. They're trying to get confirmations. They're trying to get promise to pays. They're setting up installment plans. So their workload has gone way up.
Yeah.
And they're tracking this all in a spreadsheet, right? Or multiple spreadsheets with multiple tabs. And they're trying to get this back and forth. So that's one of the big things. And then access to documentation. They don't have VPN access to all the documents they need. So that's another barrier. The cell phone, the corporate system isn't necessarily integrated with their mobile phones, right?
Right.
And how do you, you've got customer calls coming in, but how does that get forwarded to your phone? And which phone should it go to? Because which collector is it? these are all some of the things that are going on. And then, of course, you've got things like paper checks, right? So the paper check is now a barrier. I have to drive into the office. I have to get that check. I have to maybe go to the bank. That takes also time away from that extra workload that you have. So these are all the things conspiring, if you will, for these AR people. To, their workload's going up and the tools are terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's historic. I mean, that's been the way it's been until new things have occurred. And so I think you can talk about what do we require? I mean, what do we do when we're working from home or in the AR team? What's required for us to be able to do it remotely? There's got to be a lot to that.
Yeah, I think we generally think of it in three buckets. One of them is automated customer communications. We talked about the fact that if you're doing Outlook, everything's manual, but you've got more outreach that you need to do. So how can you do that? And automated customer communications is a really great way to do that. So how can you automatically, based on the aging of the invoices, send the right communication to the right customer at the right time, fully personalized, right, with all the information they need in order to deal with that or to respond to. So that's a huge portion of being able to work remotely, because that can run right out of the cloud. They don't need access to anything on premises to get that done. The second one, which is also a super important one, is the customer self-service portal. Give your customers access to the information they need. Don't rely on them having to call you. Make sure all the documents they need are available online. Make sure they can pay you online so you don't have to drive into the office to deal with that paper check. Right, so that's if you don't provide a way to pay online, then you can't really blame a customer for sending a paper check. So those are those are some of the things that you really need to think about. And then to really take it further, you have to think about moving the process out of Excel and Outlook, and that means what we call that activity management. So in Salesforce, all the things that a salesperson does is tracked by the activities. Those activities are important because you can report on them. You can see how many activities somebody does. But also those activities can have a lot of automation built into them. So first of all, when you start the activity, it provides you the invoice that you need to work on. It can provide you a communications template. It can provide you a script. It gives you all the contact information. You can click on the contact. It can actually automatically dial. Right? And it will record notes into the activity, so you don't have to record those notes for it. And then when you're done with the activity, you close it out and it stores it. And if there's a follow-up on that, it'll have that follow-up automatically recorded and sent back to you. So with that activity management, you also get automated prioritization. What should you do next? Right now, again, if those are being tracked in a spreadsheet, all of those things are like, I gotta do X, Y, and Z. That to-do list is a big to-do list. Now that's an automated to-do list. And the actual execution of that is also automated. So those are the things that when you think about really working remotely, having visibility across the team, having access to all the information you need, and having real automation that lets you get things done are critical.
And it makes total sense to me. I mean, on the ERP side, which is what, I work with every day, the cloud and having that access from anywhere, anytime is even more paramount today than ever. And I liked your comment about, the payment side and everything else, with everybody with a lot more e-commerce going on now, right? People aren't walking into the building to pay or to buy or do whatever.
No.
What you're talking about is even more important because we have to connect to that the same way. And I like the way you approach that. And so kind of talk about the managers or the people watching over, right? You've laid down some foundation for the process. How's the management dealing with it, or the attention they pay to AR and how that's changing or is changed?
Well, as you can imagine, access to credit has tightened. Right? So all organizations are really worried about their working capital. What's their cash, right?
Yeah.
And when is the cash coming in?
Right.
3 months ago, CFOs wanted a cash forecast maybe once a week, sometimes just once a month. Now CFOs want a daily forecast.
Yeah, sure.
So So visibility on that has gone way up, and they want to understand the, the logic behind the forecast. Is this promised? Is this based on installments? What's going on? And not only does the CFO want it, but the CEO wants it, right? So the owners of the companies are very interested in their cash flow and understanding what's going on. So I think that's one of the big things that's changed, is just how much reporting needs to occur. And, you think about it, back to the whole point, if you're doing this in Excel, you now have each individual collector making their set of judgments, sending that to the head of credit and collections. They're having to make their judgment. That's going to the controller on a daily basis. And those are the things that are making it difficult. And without automation, that's lost time in the collections process.
Yeah. It is, and I love the references to Excel. While as a non-practicing accountant, I understand the power of Excel, but it doesn't talk to me. It doesn't alert me. It doesn't interact me. It doesn't do anything. I like the concept. I mean, what you're talking about makes total sense. It's proactive, not reactive, and that makes sense. So when it comes to that, we're talking about strategies around collecting cash and what we can do. What's some of the new strategies that you're seeing or you feel are out there to help collect cash, especially in times like this?
Yeah, that's the thing that we've heard consistently, is a focus on customer relationships. So this is not, collection is not a collection agency. You're not trying to chase
Right.
people down. Ultimately, people still do business with people. And
Right.
I think what we're seeing is the smart AR teams understand that. And so there's a real emphasis with those teams on what we think of as just empathy. Many AR teams are calling their counterparts, their customers in accounts payable, just to check in, just to see how they're doing. Let them know that they're here. If they have a question, don't hesitate to call. And why that's such an important strategy, and it's elevating to the top, is guess what? Who gets paid first? The people who are nicest, right?
Yeah.
The people who actually cared about you, right? You're going to look out after them. So the number one thing that we're hearing is, stay connected, build good relationships, be in contact, and they'll be more open with you and tell you what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. I mean, I know we reach out just to see how people are doing, and not to sell them. I'd love to sell them, but it really is just to see how people are doing. You're right. It makes a difference. I know it does to me. And so, like, with what's going on with the way we're doing business and all the uncertainty that's around it, credit terms has to be something that pops up, right? We all had terms or what they were, and obviously solutions like yours make that better collection wise or getting paid on time. But what are we doing with collection teams? Are there changes or credit terms? What changes to what people are doing or offering? Or
Absolutely. And it varies. It's interesting. There's obviously a variance by industry of what people are doing. One company that we talked to recently provides restaurant supplies, right? So you can imagine they were hit pretty hard by this whole thing. Yeah. What they've decided to do is lower the credit limits for a lot of their customers. And the reason is they had people, let's say I had a $5,000 credit limit, but I typically never went above $2,500.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're saying, well, okay, we're going to lower you to $3,000. The reason is because there is a concern about risk that says now people are going to buy a whole bunch of inventory with no intent to pay back. So they don't lower those credit limits. That's one strategy. Another strategy has been to lower the amount of time that you're willing to have an outstanding balance so that a credit hold kicks in faster, right? And again, that's to reduce risk as they look at this. Others are going back and proactively saying, let's do an installment plan. Some money's better than no money, right? I'd rather get that in place. And then clearly people are saying, okay, back to that relationship building component, we're going to give you an extra 30 days. We understand what's going on with this. Proactively doing that and building the relationship, et cetera. So there's not one thing, there's lots of strategies people are
Yeah.
taking, but you realize what they're doing is they're looking at the risk, they're figuring out how to manage that risk and then take that approach.
Yeah, I like that. I think you have to have some options and offer some people things, but it's a great strategy. So you're helping the client, but you're managing your risk, and that ultimately is all we can do, is to manage our risk. And you touched on it earlier, talking about payments. You talked a little bit about a portal, and obviously we're not all sending checks, and we're electronic anyway in this society. What kinds of things are AR departments doing that beyond, obviously going to the office and collecting checks? What are you offering, or what are people offering to do to help people instead of paying with paper checks, or how they are handling paper checks?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is some people are going to a digital mail room. So there are technologies and platforms out there. So one is like Earth Class Mail. You can actually have everything redirected to there, and everything gets scanned, right? So you get all your physical mail now digitally, including checks, right? Where they can do the electronic deposit right through there. So they've got their own lockbox capability.
All right.
So I think the two strategies we've seen is, if you're just trying to kind of patchwork, what do you do right now, is do something like that. But the second is to really get online payments going, get that set up, proactively work with customers. A lot of times people weren't promoting online payment. They were happy to take it. But now there's really a marketing approach around adoption of online payment and making that possible.
Yeah, I don't think the tools were there. The technology was necessarily there. Not that long. We keep talking about 10 years ago, but now we do. I mean, the technology's there. What was a lockbox concept, it's funny because that's been around in ERP for a long time, was maybe ahead of its time in terms of where we are now in what you just described. That's awesome. And so your experience, obviously, with the Anytime Collect product, and something that we represent and feel strongly about, what do you think, what have you seen, I guess, is the most innovative use of Anytime Collect that you've heard of during these times? I mean, is there anything unique out there you've seen or heard?
I think that there's been a ton of really interesting things that people have done. They've expanded the number of communications they're doing. And again, back to these communications of, hey, just checking in, resources to help, all those kinds of things. So they're really thinking about kind of customer service in that role, and they're leveraging that component. Again, teams, being able to have different assignment, the use of the telephony integration has been really interesting to watch. But the one example I like the most is there's a supplier of building materials that as soon as this hit, they wanted to keep their offices open and provide curbside delivery. But in order to do that, they had to make sure that they could get payment online, because they don't release the building material until you pay for it.
Right.
So what they were able to do, because normally you would go into their store and you would use the credit card terminal. They didn't want you in the store. They didn't want you touching the terminals. They didn't want any credit cards, right? So they were like, gotta have that. So they took phone orders, issued the invoice, and told the customer as soon as they paid it online, they could come by and pick up their supplies. And that's what they were able to do. They were able to keep operating, do curbside delivery, but just make sure your invoice was paid before you came in.
Yeah, no, that's smart. It makes me think of the restaurants. I ordered food the other night, and it was a Chinese restaurant. We ordered some food and pay my credit card, pulled up with my car, and there was my food outside. But as long as I paid, it makes sense to use, in product sales, like you're talking about the bulk sale or whatever they did, having a product, a piece of software solution that lets them do that, make it more efficient, obviously help them keep their business moving. That makes, that was smart on their part. So as we kind of wrap up, I know we're getting, excuse me, towards the bottom of the half hour. Just some ways that you see AR managers are trying to keep their teams healthy and happy, and just kind of any last Matt insight into working through this, and again, how this kind of tool or the things we do can help. I mean, obviously, it makes a difference.
Well, I think the big thing for teams to kind of be healthy and happy are just doing things like we're doing right now, video.
Yeah.
People want to be connected. They, we always try and do cameras on, just even as we're working.
Right.
Lockstep was actually founded as a completely remote company when we got started. And so we've been in remote operations for quite a while. And that being said, having that personal contact, having daily check-ins, getting together for reasons other than work, right? So, having a little bit of a social hour and a way to break out. Those are all key things. Also making sure that people know they should check out at the end of the day, because there can be that tendency just to keep going and working, et cetera.
Yeah.
And people need to know that they've got to take that time off. So those are some of the key things. And then just making sure you recognize what people get done. Make sure everybody's got the pat on the back and that's authentic and focuses on what's getting done.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. And I know that. I mean, I know not being someone that's used to working remote or working from home, it's been different for me. And I find myself the same way. I don't take an hour for lunch and go out to eat or do that. I eat some lunch, I'm back at my desk in 15 minutes because that's where we are. But I do think that the whole concept of what we've talked about here today is having the tools, right? Technology's changed. We're better for it. We can do it, and AR shouldn't suffer, right? Collections need to go on.
It was interesting. One of the conversations we had recently with our collective is, how many people went to work from home, because some people didn't.
Right.
Their states didn't close down, and then of the people that did, are they going to stay remote?
Yeah.
And it was interesting. There was a mix. There was people who said, "Yeah, we're going to stay remote as a result of this."
Yeah.
And they like it. So that was the other part. It's not, they saw it as goodness, right? We had some people actually say, well, our state just reopened, so we're now back in the office, but I don't like it. They actually liked it being remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then of course, the people who never went remote go, well, I don't know the difference.
Right.
So
I think we're going to see a lot of
There's going to be
hybrid office work.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And Matt, I really appreciate it. I thank you for your insight. Excuse me. I know it's valuable to me, and I know it's valuable to our clients and prospective clients. A lot of great information. This will be available for people. And we hope that the information is helpful to the people that are out there that were listening. And we do have more coming in the future. May 28th, talking about AP automation. So it's great that we talked about AR and collections. The other side of it is AP automation, which also is important for people to attend. And I would encourage you, if you're interested in Anytime Collect and what Lockstep has to offer as a valued partner, and as them being a valuable partner to us, please reach out to your account manager or myself or anybody at E2B Tech or C2B Tech, and we'll be glad to make everything happen for you, keep things going. So Matt, stay healthy. I look forward to seeing you again somewhere in person.
Around the fireplace.
Yeah, somewhere in person. We'll actually meet maybe in the spring or late spring or summer. So take care, and I appreciate your time. Thanks, Matt.
Absolutely. Take care.